Good morning, Year 4. Today's Tuesday, the 9th of February, and this video is for the children who have the Year 4 Maths workout book. And today we are looking at page 22, fractions and decimals. Now, before we start, I just want you to have a little go at this warm up behind me. So, I want you to figure out who is the imposter. Now, I have two imposters on my board. I want you to check out which which two people are my imposters. And the first person to send the two correct answers in will get a marvellous me shout out, okay? Okay, so hopefully you've figured out which two are the imposters in today's warm-up. Moving on to looking at what we are doing today, our learning question is, can I continue to develop my knowledge of fractions? So we started to look at fractions a little bit last week, and you did some fractions on Monday. I know that they're a little bit tricky. We haven't really done much regarding fractions yet. I mean, we haven't learned about them in school. So this is the first time you're going to be looking at fractions in year 4. So if it is a little bit tricky, don't worry, that's fine, because we can have a look at what it is that you've found tricky whilst you've been having a go at fractions at home, okay? So question 1 says, these number lines count up in fractions over 100. Fill in the missing numbers. So it's asking you, they count up 1 over 100. So 1/100th they're counting up in. Now I've only gone up to 7 52/100ths, okay? So I'm going to have a go at filling in the ones in between 46 and 52, okay? So my next one should be 47 if it's going up in ones. Should then go to 48, 49 because that's one more than 48. It should then be 50, 51, and then last but not least 52. Okay, so now that we've had to go with them together, I want you to have a go at finishing the rest of the questions off for yourself. Now, before I move on, I just want to show you what's happened here, okay? So our denominator, which is the bottom number, so that's the one that is 100, so our denominator has stayed the same. The number that has changed is our numerator. So our numerator is the number on top, and it tells us how many parts of 100 we're talking about. So I can see here there are 48 parts for over 100 for this one, okay? So there are 100 parts altogether, but I can only see 48 there, okay? So your numerator in this pattern is getting bigger by 1 each time. Okay, so I want you to give it a really good go. Try your best to complete the rest of the questions for this one. If you are finding it hard, please let me know, okay? Okay, so question 2 wants you to circle the fractions in each question that are equivalent, okay? So I'm going to show you the answers to the first question in question 2, and then I will use my fraction bars to explain why, okay? And then afterwards we'll discuss what the word equivalent means, okay? So the two fractions that are equivalent in A are 2/8 and 1/4. Now I'm going to show you on my fraction bars why. Now, what do you notice about my two fraction bars? So my top one is 1/4. My bottom one is 2/8. You can see there that the same amount has been shaded in each fraction bar and they represent the same amount. It's just that the fractions are written differently. Okay, so I've broken it into equal parts. So I've got 4 equal parts and 8 equal parts here. They are the same size. So imagine it as a chocolate bar and I'm sharing it between 4 people and I'm sharing it between 8 people. Okay, and if you look, 1/4 is the same as 2/8. Okay, so I would recommend you use a fraction bar to help you with these next questions for question 2, just because I think actually drawing them out and marking on um, each part in the equal in a whole part, drawing each colouring in each part in a whole part is easier because you can see how much each one is. So using fraction bars will help you for this one. So for example, if you had 6/10, 2/3, 7/9 and 3/5 for B, I would perhaps draw them out and I would make sure that you are using your denominator to draw how many equal parts they should be. So for 6/10 you will have 10 equal parts, you will shade in 6. Same for 2/3, same for 7/9, and the same for 3/5. So I would shade in the equal parts and then I would look at all 4 of my fraction bars that I have drawn for that question and identify which ones have the same amount. Okay, so I would do fraction bars for this one. But a little explanation about equivalent fractions. So if equivalent fractions show the same number. So we saw when I was drawing on my fraction bars and shading them in, it was showing you the same amount. It was just that the fractions were written differently. So they were written in a different way. So all of these down here, these are equal fractions because they all represent a half. It's just that they're all written in a different way. Okay, now you can make an equivalent fraction by multiplying or dividing the top and the bottom of the fraction by the same number. So for example, 2/5, so 2/5 when you multiply it by 2 becomes 4/10. Now those two fractions are equivalent because they will show the same amount. It's just that they are represented differently by using different numbers. Okay, I hope that that makes sense. If you are finding that you are still struggling on equivalent fractions, please let me know because this is new. We've not looked at equivalent fractions yet, but I would recommend that you draw your fraction bars to help you with these questions. Okay, now you can use multiplication and division to help you if you are confident in using them. If you aren't confident in using multiplication and division, I recommend you using your fraction bars. Now, I use fraction bars because they showed me the exact same amount and it was visual, and I knew straight away that these two fractions were equivalent just by using fraction bars. Okay, so you can either use fraction bars or your multiplication and division knowledge to help you for this one, year 4. Okay, so your final activity in your workbook today is to circle the number that is 1/100th of the number on the left. So you've got 3 numbers, you've got 100, 10 and 1. And these are the numbers that you have got to figure out what 100th of it is. Okay, now I've left a big hint on the back of my board. It's basically asking you to divide by 100. Okay, so 100. So how many times does 100 go into 100? Is it 0.1? Is it 1? Or is it 1/10? Okay. Now, when you're dividing by 100, remember you are going over to two place value columns. So, oh dear me, misprints. That's not very good at all. That's better. So, I have my number 100 and I need to divide by 100. Now I know that I need to go over two place value spots on my grid in order for me to get my answer. So 1, 2. So you start in your hundreds and you go over. So therefore, my answer must be 1. So 1/100th of 100 must equal 1. Okay, so for the other two questions, you're dividing by 100. You might have to use your decimal place value grid if you've got one. If you don't have one but would like one, please email me and I will send you a copy of it over. I know that some children have found those very helpful. So just make sure that you use your place value knowledge to help you. So just how I have shown you with my hundreds, my tens and my ones. And remember that when you're dividing by 100, you're going over two place value spots. Okay, so I'll check this with a calculator afterwards if you weren't 100% confident. That's fine. But I just want you to make sure that you're using your place value. So for B, because it's 10, you might actually have to use a decimal place, your tenths and your hundredths. Okay, so just be mindful that with B and C, you might have to use a decimal for your answer. Okay, so that's just a warning to everyone that you might have to go over into your decimal spots. Okay, last but not least, it's time for your challenge. Okay, so today's challenge is asking you, what is 1/5 of 30? Is it 5, 6, 7 or 8? So what is 1/5 of 30? Now, I'm not going to tell you any more than that because we are going to be looking at using fractions to help us to calculate answers. Okay, so this challenge will help you with tomorrow's task if you think you can have a go at Miss Prince's challenge, then please send in your answer to me when you send in your home learning, because we will be looking at fraction calculations tomorrow. So this is just a little taster of what you might be doing tomorrow, okay? And as always, it's time to reflect. Now, what would you like more practice of? Now, I think Miss Prince needs more practice of recognising place value because she decided to write a 1 instead of an O for ones. But you might put, I would like more practice of fractions because Okay, so you might put, I'd like more practice of fractions because I do not feel very confident when working with them. That's fine, okay? So if it's something as simple as working with fractions, decimals, it might be that you want to get used to decimal places and decimal place value. That's also fine, okay? Because we've done a lot of different things today using the skills that we developed last week using fractions and decimals, okay? And we've got 2 more sessions on fractions, but it'll be fraction calculations, okay? So it'll be working out using fractions to work out answers. So it won't be figuring out what 1/100th of a number is, okay? It'll be things like subtraction and addition using fractions. It's going to be figuring out what 2/3 of 33 is, and then you'll have some applied word problems. So the applied word problems are very similar to when you do your rainbow challenge in school, okay? So I hope today's lesson has been helpful for you, and I hope you are a little bit more confident with your fractions and your decimals, because we are going to be moving on to fraction calculations on Wednesday and Thursday. If you do have any questions or you were stuck on anything, please let me know when you send your home learning over, because it's great to see what you've enjoyed, what you were confident at, what you weren't confident at, because then after half term I'll be able to do the warm-ups and activities for the warm-ups associated with the different things that you've struggled with, okay? And I will see you all tomorrow. Bye.